Alright, what's up? So my name is Joseph, and I'm introducing you to sweat paintings. What are sweat paintings? Sweat paintings are a creation that I made. It's when you work out over a watercolor canvas, and as your sweat lands, you take a powder paint. I developed a powder pigment, and then I powder the sweat. So the binding agent, it's the sweat accompanied with this paint. And sometimes what you'll see is I'll paint an image behind, and then I'll work on that, and then I'll even layer that with different paints. Sometimes I use spray paint, sometimes I use acrylics, gouache. There are different types of today we have many tools, and so what I done was I created a new tool, a new way to make art. And in that being said, like there are a couple different forms of art. You can kind of pattern it out into two: art for monetary value and art for art's sake. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those. They're two completely different worlds. So I make this artwork out of a compulsive need to make to heal and feel good about myself, and in the process, it shares to somebody else that they're worth it. That my sweat, it's just me. But when you sweat, that's you. Nobody's paying you for your sweat. And at your job, most of us, we all have this job that we work, and the job we can come to work and we can do the minimal and get paid, and we can do our best that day because we desire it and who we are. That doesn't change, and it should. And there's a conversation there that I think speaks to the sweat and the value of a human being. And so in those layers of conversations, one of the things that I distribute is it's not just my sweat. I mean, the paintings are, but what I'm sharing with people is the idea that you're just as special. As an individual, we can't really speak in generalities because we start to understand every human has a story. Every human has something different to offer the world. And so in that sense, what I'm sharing is a sweat painting. And so, and the conversation that comes with them. Uniquely enough, I love to talk about my paintings. I love to talk about art in general. And one of the things that first came to me with my artwork was my art fathers, my art mothers. These are your art parents, and art parents, you don't always produce the same art as your art parents. My art parents weren't Leonardo or Rodin, Gustav Klimt, Norman Rockwell, all of them great artists. Not most of us, I think, did not grow up in a household where we were shown these artists. We've seen them later in our schools. We've seen them when we hit college or in art class when our professor tells us, who's the artist you think is the best, and the masters. And then our professors and teachers, which are great people, tell us who the masters are of the craft we love. And then they tell us how we fit in that bracket. They're up here and we're starting down here. And I did not give a shit. I do not care. Leonardo's paintings will be getting scooted over, and you will be seeing a sweat painting there. And my painting parents, He-Man, Animaniacs, Powerpuff Girls, Ralph Bakshi, early Disney, Robin Hood, Sword in the Stone. Oh my gosh, Munchie Cheese, the Brownies. Okay, so what I'm naming to you is when I was a child, these were the things that made me inspired to make art. Deb Zatt, I met her. She's a wonderful woman. She is, I believe, Tom T. I don't know how to pronounce his whole last name, but he produced the cells for He-Man. And she was the person who colored those cells. So she put the pinks, the purples, the blues. She made those shades and she colored those cells. I mean, that is what inspired me. The idea that those artists, Michael Swanning, make Captain Planet, Brave Star, the stories that they told and the colors that they picked and the shapes of the people that they were painting with, like Ralph Bakshi working with Frank Frazetta and making Fire and Ice. And Frank Frazetta, I mean, you're talking about, for me, one of my favorite painters. My artwork, it does not look like their art. And it shouldn't, because I'm not trying to replicate their artwork. What I saw from that was intensity. What I saw from those artists that I admire was the ability to creatively make something out of a compulsive need. They were compelled to create and also go against the establishment. As much as I like Disney films, Ralph Bakshi and a lot of his creations are in stark contrast to show that there isn't just one form of doing things. There are many, and we shouldn't market this the way that it's being marketed. And it's okay. Now there's that two worlds again. You have art for art's sakes and art for monetary sakes. And when we all go to our artist friend and we're like, hey, could you paint me a logo or can you draw me a picture? And then we're kind of, I've engaged this a few times where the price, the person's trying to dictate. Like, I'm trying to tell you how much I'm going to let you charge me for for the painting I'm asking you to paint for me. Image, all that. So in the consideration, so if you just take the knowledge that it takes a person to learn in their skills, the craft, if they go to school or if they don't, but they show that they've logged into hours on the internet, researching and looking up and doing their homework and studying. Okay, all that is in that person's brain. At the same time, the time that it's going to take for them to create your painting or your image with the knowledge that they've grown to have. This is what we pay them for. And that payment is to show that I'm aware of your education. Now, there are computer programs and there are people who can do things, and it seems like magic because they're just it's a beautiful image. That took practice. So I'm just sharing that with everybody. Appreciate it. Take a minute to think, okay, that student of art, the person who's learning art took the time to do that. And it's not our fault that some people in the art, or that the world today looks at our artwork and says, we want you to make coloring books. We want you to make a cartoon or something monetary, and it's for promotions purposes. Cool. A lot of us artists need to eat, and it's a big deal. But there's a lot of us artists who are also making artwork for the conversation of art. What we're doing is we're trying to take the conversation and grow it. One part of the conversation right now is making something more beautiful, which is great. But I haven't heard a lot of these artists mention that when we make something more beautiful that's usually ugly, the contrasting shows up. What's ugly? And so that means we do have to discuss there is something that's ugly and there is something that's beautiful. That doesn't mean that something ugly can't be beautiful or recognized as such, but to make one thing, like if I go to my room, right, my studio, and I make a mess in one spot, the more beautiful the rest of my room is, the more messy that spot looks. So if I show up into a place and I am aesthetically unpleasing, which is really strange, what does that mean? What does that mean? Do you mean I'm not symmetrically the same on both sides? Do you mean, right? We start having questions about beauty, not beauty, and those are conversations that shouldn't be at anybody's detriment. What they should be at is the conversation and where it holds. In context, it's art. And we're trying to understand and unpackage what art is today. Because as it is, something like sweat painting is a conversation that I'm so blessed to be able to have and share with people. But when it comes time to now go into an art gallery and I'm speaking with individuals who know art, they're telling me what this is. They've not done push-ups. They've never sweated. So the conversation, for me, it holds something more endearing when it's the person in the gym or the person running down the street and they're sweating and they're just like, you have to break a threshold to get sweat. You can't you're not going to start running and be like, whew, there's a lot of sweat. You have to break a threshold. Your mind goes into a certain moment of focus. It becomes therapeutic. This becomes art to me. So I'm sharing this with everybody. That's the brief introduction to the first steps of sweat painting. Get it? Want to share that with you guys. Have a wonderful day.